Let's now go back to our correspondent Siddhant, who's with us now. Siddhant, also talk to us about the reactions that have been pouring in. We just heard from Sonam Wangchuk, who has hailed it as a victory for democracy, and he has also hailed the youth of India for peacefully getting the government to heed to their demands.
Well, yes, reaction coming from Mr. Wangchuk himself, who in many ways spearheaded this protest before, of course, he was taken by the authorities, by the police to the hospital, which was criticized by many. Now, when it comes to the reactions which have been pouring in across political lines, of course, there are politicians who are claiming it as their own victory, but clearly it is seen as a clear victory for the Cockroach Jantar Party, the student leaders who have been sitting there at the protest site. But a big political week for India. It is rare to have such kind of development in terms of the political action in India in many years. In fact, the first resignation coming in. Of course, the various political parties will be taking their own stance now as to how they will be recalibrating their positions. While the national elections are still far away, there are regional elections expected to happen, including in the northern state of Punjab and in Uttar Pradesh. What will be the impact of this agitation is something that will be clearly seen. But a lot of lessons, first of course, is how this was a protest largely led by young people, and also on social media, particularly when it comes to Instagram. In terms of media also, a lot of introspection, but one big worrying trend that came was attack on media personnel, and that happened around the crowds, around Jantar Mantar. Of course, the Cockroach Jantar Party leaders distanced itself, but it is clear that online trolling of media personnel that has translated into such violent action on the ground by many, and also in terms of the larger political consequences of such protests. India hasn't seen such protests for more than a decade. The last time it was in UPA era part 2 that happened after the developments back then the Nirbhaya rape case. But clearly this protest has changed many things. As they say in politics, a week can be pretty long week, and perhaps this week was that week that was a pretty long week in terms of how political dynamics have essentially changed. Will it impact on the voters' ability or their voters' choices? That is something that will be seen. But this is happening at a time when the parliament session, the monsoon session, is underway. The first week went into a lot of chaos, a lot of ruckus, and also, of course, the opposition raising many matters. The government, of course, also putting its point of view in many ways. But the government plans to bring many laws as well. That is something that will be carefully watched next week. But also the big law, that is the law when it comes to action against those who have been involved in corruption scandals, including, of course, the big one, the examination process that needs to be transparent, as we have been telling about the importance of examination. But clearly today was also a long day in terms of not only resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan, but a joint press conference by the government and the students' leaders, where they have withdrawn the protest that was taking place for days at Jantar Mantar, but also saw violent aspects both on 20th and earlier today as well, when there was tear gas firing by the police officials.
Absolutely, Siddhant. And while we've seen a lot of fuss and be it in terms of violence or memes or the cultural context around the protests which has shifted, it has brought about this radical change in the way we speak about topics like education and, of course, how the Gen Z has chosen to represent themselves in this protest. But Siddhant, stay with us while we go to our correspondent Dharmendra, who's been closely tracking all the developments from the ground from Jantar Mantar.